So here are 4 examples of sketching using line of action when doing figure drawing. The number one first step when sketching figures is to identify the line of action in the reference. Here I'm using reference by Aaron Blaise, the Disney artist. And you see I'm identifying the line of action, which in this case is the direction of the movement, the direction of the force, and hence the direction of the body. You can see I've represented the directionality of the action using an arrow, although I have fixed it a little, and it is very important to fix during sketching the line of action. Here I drew it too high up, so I moved it a little bit further down to get his punch going in the right direction. This was a critical skill for me to understand and practice when I was a working concept artist. And once you really lock in that action and lock in the proportions, the inking kind of almost completes itself, and you can see the figure, it's much more lively. Now, in the second figure here, it's a back shot and this kid is falling. So we get some great line of action. It's a nice curve, but it's elongated, so it really emphasizes the motion of the body. And I'm paying a lot of attention to the proportions here because it's a slightly unusual pose. So we want to make sure that the waistline, the size of the head, and the position of the hands are all done correctly. And again, I'm very keen to be fixing mistakes during the sketching phase, even during the inking phase. And one thing you'll see me fix is the length of the legs. I know that as one of my weaknesses, for whatever reason, I tend to draw legs too long. So knowing your weaknesses is very important, and I keep an eye out for that continuously as I draw, and you see me shortening the legs and feet at the end here. This third figure is interesting because in the reference there are 2 sort of lines of action. There's the main one that the body is following, and then there's a second one that is contrasting it. Kind of looks like the 2 lines are running into each other, which creates an interesting force, contrast, and balance to the overall, human form. So yeah, there's no rule to how many lines of action there needs to be. There doesn't need to be only one. However, the more there are, the more there's a tendency for the picture to start getting messy. And here again, the proportions are very important. The figure is a bit more in perspective, running into the distance. So the arms need to be more into perspective, as well as the legs and the torso. And I find putting the torso in perspective to be a bit tricky because it's hidden under clothing. So we have to pay attention to that. So the last figure here is a bit more unique because this person is sitting, and there is still a line of action if a person is static and not doing anything. And in this case, the line of action is curled in on itself, and having it sort of coiled does create a sort of tense action in this pose. And Aaron Blaise is really great at doing this. Even though he's just sitting down and playing some video game, you can see that there is focus, there's tension, there's stress in what he's doing. So don't make the mistake of thinking that line of actions have to be, sweeping, broad, straight, S-curve motions. Line of action can curl in on itself, and you get to create some really interesting, dynamic, yet static figures using it this way. And that's why it's so important to identify and get that line down first to understand it before drawing a figure, because it really brings to life even unmoving people.